more interesting that it is almost identical to that illustrated on the 13th century painting. And because we can't tell from the overall structural technique whether it's from India or from the Middle East, we then look at the species of all the timbers that were used in the vessel. We took samples from most of the main structural elements. And here they are, the stem, the frames, the planks, the anchor. We sent them to Israel actually to get them identified in a university there. And they've come back as African timbers. Most of the main structural elements were from Africa. Not implying it was made in Africa. They didn't make vessels of that size. They didn't have the trade. But the timber could be easily transported either up the Nile or straight across onto the east coast and sent further up to places like present-day Yemen, Oman, and within the Gulf. We have one exception, the through beams, which are the planks that actually go right through. They penetrate the hull both sides. They give a lot of rigidity to the hull. They were teak. And teak is a wonderful wood for ship construction. They were solid pieces, and they were clearly not from the Middle East or from Africa. They don't have teak there, and they came from India most likely. But we have historic documentation that quite frequently teak and coconut wood was sent from India across the Middle East for ship construction because they didn't have any there. Palm wood was useless for ship construction. So that is not contradictory. The fact that that wood is from India completely fits in with the vessel still being built in the Middle East. On top of that, we had a separate analysis done. There's a little bit of bitumen that came off one of the through beams, and that's been shown to have come from Iran or Iraq. So we can quite confidently now say that the vessel is from the Middle East. And looking at these details, Oman, Yemen are more than likely the original places of construction. I think in the introduction there it was an Indian or Arab vessel. That's a bit of an old note there. We've since concluded that it's Arab, definitely not Indian. And then moving on a step further, this is where a very knowledgeable pseudo-naval architect, nautical archaeologist came in to assist, Nick Bernier, and he drew up these plans based on the details we had from the underwater site. And the reason for doing this is because the Omani government stepped up and very kindly offered to do a replica of the vessel and to do an extremely authentic replica to the point where the team was sent down to Africa to go and source the original wood. So everything is done right back to as authentic as possibly can be done from the archaeological evidence. And this is a model that Nick built based on his design and based on what we got from the seabed. It's a beautiful ship, quite beamy, but a narrow bow, and quite capable of carrying those 60,000 individual ceramic items. You might notice here we've actually got a quarter rudder drawn in here, obviously from the seabed site. We had part of the hull that actually went right up to these are the through beams going through, and we had hull remains up to here that had been flattened out on the seabed. But beyond that, up here, the mast, the sails, the rudders, not really guesswork, but using various other sources of information, historic texts and drawings and rock paintings and what have you, to come up with the final design. But I'm confident that this is quite realistic. We've got here an axial rudder as well as the quarter rudders. In the 9th century there was a transition between the two, so we couldn't confirm either one, and put both. A bit of experimental archaeology for the voyage back from Oman to Singapore, and as you're aware, that just arrived a month or so ago in Singapore. And just quickly, some details of the building of the vessel. This is over in Oman, and the craftsmen are both Indian and Omani. And even back in the 9th century, there's quite a high likelihood that the craftsmen from both countries would have been to and fro, because the interaction was quite great at that time. And the detail, you can see the stitching, the effort that was involved in drilling those thousands upon thousands of holes through the wood and stitching it. And from the voyage over from Oman, it's been shown quite clearly that there was almost no leaking through all the stitching. Originally, people thought, geez, the ship is going to be very flexible. It's going to flex with the waves and start to fall apart, and the water will be in, and they'll be bailing all the time. In fact, that old 13th century painting that I showed, there's two gentlemen with buckets bailing water out of it in the painting. So it obviously was a problem. Maybe was lifted out of the water, she was still completely rigid. So it turned out to be a wonderful system, and that's the final vessel, which is now going to be on display in Singapore. Very fortunate. So having looked at the ship, now I'd like to just go through some of the artifacts that were found from it. We've determined the ship was from the Middle East, probably Oman, and by looking at the artifacts we can determine where she went to and speculate on where she was going to. It was difficult, hard work getting up all these artifacts. We didn't have any recognition on a little fishing boat. That was our exercise after a couple of hours of diving and decompressing each day. And we did this after every dive, so there was plenty of exercise going on. Some of those large dusun jars, completely full of sand and water, were extremely heavy. So this is the jar that came up. It's placed on the rope there, and then we carefully go through it and take out all the sediment just to see if there's any foodstuffs, fish bones, any archaeological evidence of what they had as cargo on board the vessel. But all of these, apart from some I'll very soon get to, were completely empty, just sand, sterile material. So probably liquids originally stored in these jars. Except for these ones, and these were very stunning finds. There's up to 130 changsha balls stored inside these dusun jars. Not all of them, maybe 20-30% of the jars that came up were full of these balls. And because they were in the jar, and because the very fine sediment came into that jar almost immediately after the vessel wrecked, the balls that came out of it are pristine. They're almost the same as when they first came out of the kiln. And we had one jar that had a pre-existing crack in it along the top. When we put it down on the rope, it just broke open, and it shows very clearly the helical system of packing the bowls within. They didn't waste any space. We also have the changsha ewers. That was the first slide I showed. The ewers were all stuck within that concretion. There were also a lot of individual ewers. For some reason, the brown overlays that they used seem to have deteriorated on most of these. But they also had these beautiful stamp decorations on four sides of the ewer. And that's some examples. There's a line over there, there's a palm, perhaps even a date palm. So some of these motifs on the ewers, why the ewer is made in Changsha, China, southern China, you're getting some of the decorations imply a Middle Eastern influence. And more from Changsha, they weren't only bowls. We had these decorative cats figurines, purely decorative. We had these fantastic little chalice. They're probably modelled off a metal version, made in ceramic, and they have a straw incorporated into the vessel itself. And then inside it is a mini figurine of a fish or sometimes a turtle, and underneath that is a hole. The hole joins the straw, so you can actually drink out of this jar, this cup, by sucking through that straw, and the hole's hidden. Fantastic example from Changsha, probably one of the best ever found. That's nearly a metre tall. That ewer defies even modern potters to be able to create something like that to remain completely vertical without any slumping whatsoever within the kiln. And a separate cover there, which is a dragon's head. A remarkable piece there from Changsha. And another remarkable piece here, perhaps not aesthetically so remarkable, but this piece of blue and white porcelain, and the blue is a cobalt, almost certainly imported from Persia at that stage. They didn't actually mine the cobalt within China for ceramics in the 9th century. This is the oldest known intact blue and white ever found in the world. And now Singapore has that in our possession again. 3 pieces were found on the wreck. This doesn't look brilliant. It's got some deterioration on the outside, but this whiteware was created up in the kilns in northern China, in Ding and Tsing kilns up there. And some of the best porcelain of that time was created there. So in amongst a lot of this changsha, which you can't call it rice bowl quality, but it was obviously mass produced for export, we have these extremely delicate and valuable pieces, the whiteware, the blue and white, the various unique chunks pieces showing up on the vessel, and they were all stored down towards the stern in a more protected part of the ship. Some of the non-ceramic pieces we have, this is also from China, it's ink, or you rub the ink stick there, ink block, and it's got a depiction of a cicada on the side. Probably used by a merchant. You can actually see scratch marks in the base there, where it's probably already used as opposed to something that was going to be traded. And dye. That's how they while away the time, all the months and months at sea. And interestingly, I've probably worked on half a dozen Southeast Asian and Chinese wrecks or more, and a lot of them have dye. It's not something unique to this vessel, but it's certainly the earliest one. So you always have to have something to do with all that time at sea, and so did our crew. We had to have something to do. But it wasn't gambling for money as such. But if you lost a hand, you had to dangle 2 bottles of chili sauce around your neck between the next hands. So various means of whiling away the time at sea. Back to the wreck, we've got this Chinese mirror. And that's actually dated to a couple of hundred years prior to the wrecking date. So that's quite a mystery why an antique was already being carried on board this ship. Whether it was a gift, whether it was just belonged to a particularly important merchant, or whether it was for trade, we don't know. It's a beautiful example. More beautiful examples of this silver, it's gilt silver, covered boxes. And there were quite a few found. Some were found within large boxes. There was one large gilt silver covered box that had 4 of these inside it. And the ones inside were still in magnificent condition. And a lot of these things have the decorations in pairs. A pair of goats, a pair of birds. And there's some implication there that this might have been a gift for a wedding, for a royal wedding. And there's a lot of little elements that are very hard to survive in a marine setting. The gilt silver, a lot of the silver would completely corrode away, and it's just left as a powder, but the gilt layer and the bit of coral formation, the bit of corrosion on top of that, sometimes survived as a little sheet that came off from the destroyed artifact, and you still have incredible detail of the peacock, birds there, there's circling lines on that one. Again, a lot of these things in pairs. And that's a bit hard to depict what that is, but this is a palm tree here, and it's a sort of a mythical beast with a rider, perhaps a camel, under the tree. And then, of course, this magnificent artifact, the octagonal gold cup with the musicians. Fair bit of Middle Eastern influence. Some of these have actually been found in China before, but this is the biggest one that's been found, and together with this there were various dishes in perfect condition, beautiful gold, very nicely worked dishes, all part of this cargo. Obviously they were not for general cargo use, they would have been clearly a gift perhaps to a cutting. There was some more gold that's clearly not worked. These are little tiny nuggets and gold dust. This is quite interesting because there was a little patch on the seabed, probably 1 metre by 1 metre, where this started to occur back towards the stern of the vessel again. But to sit down there with a big pair of tweezers on the seabed and taking out individual pieces of gold dust is going to take us many months. So instead of doing that, we actually took all the sand from that area, put it in a sack, brought the sacks up onto our fishing boat, stole all the rocks from the galley, and then sat on the bow of the fishing boat and we panned for gold on the bow of our fishing boat. Spent a day or 2 doing that, which was a very pleasant experience. Not quite as valuable as gold, but archaeologically very important. These are degraded star anise spice, and they're all inside this jar. There's also, when we were doing the excavation, a lot of this material was just floating out from the sediment. So some was in jars, some might have been in a jar that was broken, some might have been in sacks. But amazingly, this too has survived all those years in the sedimentary environment, 17 metres under the water. It's important because quite a few people speculate that the cargo was not loaded in China. It did go all the way to China, but it went to one of the ports in Srivijayan Kingdom, possibly Palembang, Jambi,